The best response you can have to a payoff in a thriller is someone goes, "Oh, right, I forgot. Of course, I should have."
On Story offers a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. All of our content is recorded live at Austin Film Festival and our year-round events. To view previous episodes, visit onstory.tv. On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. This week's On Story, acclaimed movie star Woody Harrelson and legendary writer-director Rob Reiner.
If you've got good writing with a good story, you don't have to do anything. You just have to say what's there and say it honestly, and the audience will read in what they need to read in for you because you're being supported.
In this episode, Woody Harrelson and Rob Reiner discuss bringing the political and personal life of President Lyndon Baines Johnson to the big screen.
A new leader has emerged.
America has a Southern president.
You don't waste any time, do you, Lyndon?
Excuse me? Rather not have it than have it this way.
Kennedy is a man of great ideas. Now the country needs a man who can deliver.
There will be no compromise. This is about making President Kennedy's vision a reality.
This will define your presidency.
I can only hope.
I wouldn't call it a biopic because if you were going to do a biopic of LBJ, I mean, he had an incredible career. You'd have to look at all the Robert Caro books, and you'd probably make a TV miniseries that would be 10, 12 hours or something like that. We just basically looked at a little sliver of time in LBJ's life. And it basically, the whole picture takes place, we do flashbacks, but the whole picture in time takes place from the time Kennedy arrives at Love Field in Dallas till LBJ makes this very famous speech in front of the joint session of Congress about civil rights. And we do flashbacks to when he was majority leader and when he was running for president, became vice president. But we wanted to limit it to that because everybody, you know, you probably know a lot more about LBJ than most people in the country. People think of LBJ as like this kind of bull in the china shop, larger than life, arm twisting guy who would get his own way and push people into doing things legislative for him. And you know, that is an image that people have him. But he also had a very sensitive side. He was very insecure about being loved and about feeling like he was loved. So he felt unloved and at times felt paralyzed to be able to move forward. So when you think about a guy who was able to accomplish what he accomplished legislatively, domestically, to think of that guy racked with doubts and racked with insecurity, it's an amazing duality.
Why don't you like me? Your brother likes me. Your father likes me. What is it makes you hate me so much?
I don't hate you. We see the world in very different ways.
Then why do you keep me around? I was in Congress 24 years, but you never asked for my help in legislative issues. Now, I'm from the South, but when you need help down there, you go to other Southerners. Hey, why don't you just put me out to pasture?
We wanted to try to see if we could add more light to that part of him, and that's why we picked this one area, because he had to assume the presidency, the burden of assuming the presidency from a president who was loved. Kennedy was loved. He was handsome. He was articulate. He was a great, had a sense of humor, all this stuff. And Kennedy and Johnson felt, I'm not going to be loved. They're not going to love me like Kennedy. They won't accept me like Kennedy. So at a time when he is under the most pressure, that to me is when you're going to bring out a person's true nature.
How did the project actually get to you? I mean, it is a departure from something that both of you have done, really.
Well, it came to me, my partners at Castle Rock, they said, you want to take a look at this and see if there's something you're interested in. I, at first, was not even wanting to look at it because for me, as a kid growing up, I was draft age during the Vietnam War. So to me, it was like, LBJ is a bad guy, he's my enemy. I don't want to make a movie about him. But then I thought more about it, and I realized that as I've gotten older, as I've grown up, and I spent a lot of time in politics, and I had actually a job in government in California for 7 years, I started to understand what he was able to accomplish and how extraordinary. And had it not been for Vietnam, would have gone down as one of the great presidents of all time. And when you think about his legislative achievements, it's it's second to maybe FDR. So I wanted to, and I said, let me take a look at this guy and see if there's a broader picture that I can paint of him, so that it's not just my image of him and Vietnam. So that's what I decided to look at it, and then got into it. And then I called Woody up, and Woody had virtually the same reaction that I had initially, which was, he was scared about the Vietnam thing. And
yeah, I really had some trepidation on that front because it's hard to get over the concept of, genocide. So, now I look at him in a much broader kind of vantage point, and I do know that he did a lot of good things, legislatively, probably did more than any president except for FDR, and some very important legislation, obviously civil rights being key to that. But even the Vietnam War thing, I look at it like, because he inherited the, quote, wise men from Kennedy, the same guys who were telling him to bomb Russia, drop nukes on Russia.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, and these guys were always pushing for military action here, there, and everywhere, as they seem to still do.
Yeah.
So I think he had to look at it like, it's my fight against communism, the same way as Hero FDR was fighting fascism, So he thought of it in a positive light, maybe, that he was doing a good thing, but obviously he had a lot of guilt about the Vietnam thing, and so.
What I realized was that here was a man who had a consummate dedication to the understanding of the intersection of politics, policy, and government. And you have to know all three and how they work in order to move an agenda forward. He knew when he went to pass because people always ask, did he really feel that way about civil rights? Did he not? My take on him was, he didn't think of himself as a Southerner. He thought of himself as a Texan. And a Westerner, because he was from West Texas. But he was more than happy to accept the mantle of being a Southerner if it meant he could talk to Southerners and get them to do what he needed them to do. So, he was all those things. And he knew that I'm not going to push this out until it's ready. And so what did he do? Even when he decided to go with it, and he didn't decide until he had a martyr in President Kennedy to help him. As we say in the film, you'll see he was fighting, the Congress was going to be fighting two presidents now. And he knew, now I can get it done. But even with that, he knew he would lose the Democrats in the South. He said, and he was going to spend a tremendous amount of political capital to get it done. And yes, he said, I'm going to lose the South for a generation. And it turned out to be way more than a generation.
Sir, you're going to lose the support of the people who've always had your back. And if you aren't successful, you're never going to earn the support of anyone else.
4 other presidents have fought Congress on this and failed.
There will be no compromise. There will be no negotiation, and there will be no failure. This time, Congress is not fighting a president, it is fighting 2. Never underestimate the intensity of a martyr's cause or the size of a Texan's balls.
I think all of us have like various personalities, you know. We have the personality that deals with our parents, you know, the personality deals with our best friend. You know, you become different people depending, and I think Johnson really had that in spades. He was like very, he could be all kinds of things to all kinds of people, depending on the scenario. And definitely when he's talking to Richard Russell, who's just incredibly powerful senator, the head of the Southern Caucus, he had to be a little more gentle, but a little more bombastic sometimes with people who weren't coming through, who were on his staff. And
well, he also played to Russell's racism. He you know, made Russell feel like he was one of him. I'm with you on this, you know, I'm with you, and making Russell feel like it was okay to have those racist feelings, which is, you know, crazy. And it's not until the end of the movie that he finally says to Richard Russell, you're a racist, you know. But he was trying to get certain, you know, tease out certain kind of concessions from Russell.
I am asking you, I'm begging you to give these Kennedys a little something just to quiet them down. I mean, it ain't gonna make any difference. But if we don't move at all, their allies are gonna line up against us, and there's gonna be no way to put the brake on all sorts of wild legislation. It'll be Reconstruction all over again.
Well, let them try. Just let them try, and I will use every means at my disposal to defend this cause till the last breath of air escapes my lungs.
Keep the air in your lungs, Dick. I'm gonna get you what you want, but just help me out a little bit here.
So once you had the script, how did the 2 of you work together really to develop what parts of LBJ you were going to reveal where?
Well, I mean, the reason I wanted Woody to begin with was that he has humanity, you know? I mean, we wanted to show a full, rounded picture of LBJ, and I know Woody, you know, he can play all the strength and the power, but he also has this very soft human side, and he also has a great sense of... Yeah, see, I knew that would get it. I knew that would get it. And he has a great sense of humor. He's also from Texas, you know, so.
Yeah, blah, blah.
Yeah. No, I wanted that. And so we knew that there were certain scenes. There's a scene you'll see tonight where he's now become president. President Kennedy's been assassinated. He's taken on the presidency, and he is really having his doubts about whether or not he can actually do this and whether or not the American public is going to accept him. And he walks into the bedroom, and he's carrying a drink in one hand and a gallon of ice cream in the other, you know. And he's like basically, you know, sad. And he gets with his wife, Lady Bird, and you know, he talks about his insecurities and everything, and she's able to, you know, give him the strength to go on.
They want Jack. They love Jack. They love Bobby. They don't even like me.
Lyndon, your mother didn't turn her back on you because she didn't love you. She just couldn't stand to see you when you weren't at your best.
She wouldn't want to see me now.
You're gonna be all right. You're a good man in a tight spot. President Kennedy did wonderful things for America, not the least of which was choosing you to be his successor. He was a man of great ideas. Now the country needs a man who can deliver.
That's the one scene where you really see who Johnson is, because after that scene, he then kicks into high gear and he gives this great speech to his aides about what he wants to do with the Civil Rights Bill.
You know, sometimes as an actor, your level of insecurity can be pretty monumental, you know, and so it's nice to have also a fellow actor and a genius director tell you, hey, listen, don't worry, that what you're doing is great, just keep going. Yeah. And also, even if it wasn't right, he'll tell you in a way that doesn't, like, cut your legs out from under you and make you feel like you're, you know, just, you know, don't know what you're doing, you know. He just always encouraging and hopeful and like, you know, the way he directs you breeds positivity and creativity, you know.
Yeah, I would never ask, I mean, having been in that position, and I know, you know, you get insecure, I get all that. I would never ask an actor to do something that I couldn't do. And I'm not the best actor in the world, but I'm okay, you know. But I know how to make a transition, or you know how to make a moment work or not moment work. And I would never ask somebody to do something I knew that they couldn't do. And when you have great actors, you know, it makes it a lot easier. And Woody will tell you, you know, when he does scenes with Richard Jenkins, who's an incredible actor, it's like playing tennis with somebody who can really hit the ball back to you and makes it your life easier. It makes it, you know, your performance is going to be better when you're with somebody like that.
The best leaders of the time from both our states voted for secession. And they were great men who nearly destroyed America. I don't ever want a history book to say that about me. Mm.
Let me ask you something.
Hmm.
When's the last time you had a meal with her?
She's an employee, but if you think that I would have any objection to breaking bread with her, then you are a fool.
So you're telling me she's your equal?
That woman spends more time in this house than anyone except Lady Bird. She is family.
I don't know how I miss the resemblance. Look, what I'm talking about here is freedom. I'm talking about the preservation of a certain way of life. A way of life that you and I both grew up with. There's nothing wrong with that.
Then why are we whispering?
Woody, you know, I never would ask him something he couldn't do. I knew he could do it. And then, you know, you also want to give him somebody to play with. You know, somebody he can hit the ball back and forth with, you know. Here's what's crazy about this. We finished this film long before Trump became president. And we had no thought that that would ever happen. And I can tell you because I've seen this film so many times. I watched it before Trump became president. And then the first time I saw it, after Trump had become president, it was the most bizarre experience I've ever had. This is a film that I've made, and I saw a different movie. I watched a completely different movie without having changed a frame. And, you know, I said, you know, you watch a movie when you're young, when you're kids, and you may have movies that you love, you know, that you've seen right now. And then you wait 20, 30, 40 years, you look at that movie again, and one or two things will happen. Either you'll say, well, it's not really that good. I liked it because I was that age. Or you'll say, I really love this movie now more than I did even when I first saw it, because now you're bringing your life experience to watching the movie and you're looking at it through a different prism. So this shift that happened here happened like that. And all of a sudden, the lens from which we're watching this movie completely changes. And things that you see in the movie are taking on different kinds of meaning because of what we see. First of all, you're seeing a president that actually functions. and actually, I mean, we're laughing about it, but, who actually knows how government works, how to get things done, I mean, it's an interesting time we're living in, So you will only know this movie based on what's happening to you now. So, but just know that when we started this, that was the furthest thing from our mind that Trump would be president.
With any character, you search for clues. I mean, at first you're almost a detective trying to find, little clues about the person. But obviously with LBJ, there's a lot of clues out there. There's a lot of things you can watch him, you can read tons of stuff about him, you can hear those phone calls were really great. Have you guys listened much to those phone calls? I mean, it's incredible.
Are you talking about the tapes from his
Yeah, the tapes. Oh, by the way, interesting thing, which I know Rob loves this too, but on his way out the door, he tells Nixon, who tried to sabotage the peace talks, didn't want peace happening before the election, which Nixon did sabotage those the peace talks, the Vietnam talks. But on the way out the door, he tells Nixon, hey, whatever you do, make sure to record all your conversations. Which, of course, Nixon did, luckily. And so he just one shot right out the door. Which,
I don't think he knew what that was going to lead to.
He didn't know it would lead to his demise. But so, so there's all these things. But I got to say, even in spite of all the wealth of information about him, it's very daunting because he looms large in history. And anybody, even if they don't know who LBJ is, can just readily find out this is what he looked like, sounded like, and everything. And I would get really quite bogged down on things like particularly the voice. And I would be like, even though I'm from Texas, there's a very distinct way that LBJ spoke, because he's from the hill country and I'm like Houston, so it was quite a lot of differences, but it would drive me insane, which Rob can attest. Yeah. And Rob's just finally like, would you just relax and chill out? It's okay,
he tried it, he got close and his walk and his physicality, but ultimately you want to see the humanity of Woody come through, and it's a little balancing act between seeing LBJ and seeing the humanity of Woody come through, and that to me is what makes it interesting. If it's just LBJ, it's a wax figure. It could be it's like it doesn't have the humanness to it. I believe that people, unfortunately, they get a lot of their history through popular culture and through movies. And right now that we're living in this world of fake news and propaganda that's being pushed out through social media, it's more important even now for filmmakers or historians to be as accurate as possible, because people are getting their history through these things. In the thing like LBJ, there's a lot of documentary footage of him, voice, telephone calls, recordings. The Robert Caro books are loaded with, he's the preeminent biographer of LBJ. There's a lot of information. So there's nothing in there that, it may be not exactly the dialogue because we're not there, we weren't there, but every scene that you see happened to LBJ. And so that's what we try to do. We didn't take any licenses and say, and the best review that we ever got on this, because we showed it a long time ago here at the library, and Lucy Baines was sitting in the front row. And after we finished the movie, we came up to do the Q&A, Woody and I did, and I was so nervous because I'm watching this whole movie with her father and her father's relationship to her mother, and I said, I just have to know, please, I want to hear what you have to say. And she stood up. She's a very tiny woman, very formal, and she said, the man I saw on the screen tonight was the man I knew. I said, that's it. So I felt okay, because we had we had done, I think, the right thing. We didn't dramatize it to the point where you said, no, that didn't happen, that couldn't happen.
You've been watching a conversation with Woody Harrelson and Rob Reiner on Story. On Story is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's On Story project, including the On Story PBS series, now streaming online, the On Story radio program and podcast in collaboration with Public Radio International, and the On Story book series available on Amazon. To find out more about On Story and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.